Welcome to Leaseweb Tech Talk, the podcast exploring tech landscape, cloud hosting, and IT infrastructure. Whether you're a professional or new to tech, Leaseweb Tech Talk got you covered. Join us for latest trend, business cases, insightful interviews, and useful tips. Okay, we're ready. Welcome to Leaseweb Tech Talk. I'm your host, Pamily. I am back with Shanook, Jaansen, where we'll be speaking about common challenges that customers face while configuring CDN. How are you, Shanook?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you.
Are you excited for the second part to share with the listeners about different challenges?
I do think it's very important that our listeners hear this because they don't want to make these mistakes, because that can be really impacting your business.
Yeah, this is definitely for them is taking or learning about the best practices, right?
Exactly.
And I can definitely tell you that you have been doing great so far educating our listeners.
Well, thank you.
Shanook, to start with, let's look at the challenges and the mistakes customer faces with caching. And one of the most overlooked topic is course header. So what is it and what does it do?
So a course header stands for cross-origin resource sharing. And what it does is basically it checks whether one origin can connect to another origin. Okay. So for example, a website can connect to a user if that is allowed. So one of the common mistakes that are made with customers that they don't set up caching rules for their origin headers, for their course headers. And what happens then is that when you usually fetches content from the cache that is faster, closer to the end user, it now, if you don't have your caching rules applied to your course headers, then in order to check whether the origin can connect to the end user request, it needs to go back all the way to the origin server, which creates an overload of traffic towards your origin server. Yeah. The content can be fetched from the cache, from the POPs, but the course header cannot. That check of if it can be connected, if it can be shared, goes back to the origin. Okay. So that creates additional traffic to your origin and ultimately also impacts the performance of your end users. Because if you can imagine, if you want to watch a video, and what a CDN does obviously is that it checks your nearest POP location that can send the content closest to you. If that can be done, but then the check whether if that information can be shared with me needs to go back to the origin, that takes time and that impacts performance and time to load or time to reach your website or time to like being able to watch a video. That all impacts. And also it overloads your origin with requests, which also adds up on money because every request made to the origin is additional cost that you have to pay. Okay,
that's actually great to know. So what is a possible way to just avoid this sort of challenges?
So I think it's very important that customers realize that they should not forget to also cache their course headers, because if you cache your course headers, the validation of whether content can be shared from one origin to the other can come from the cache, so the POP location, rather than going all the way back to the origin server.
Oh, that's great to know. It sounds that if they can configure it correct, it's going to make their life much easier and the business continuity.
It actually helps with user experience and performance, which leads to better satisfied customers, better reputation for your business. It saves you cost, it has better performance, and it always benefits your business for sure.
Definitely. Let's look into the next challenge. So Shanook, let's break it down because we have spoken a lot about the course header. So let's break it down more. And just to give an example, if a user is trying to access a video, what role does the course header play?
So you need to see a course header as some kind of like border security.
Okay.
So it basically sends a pre-request to the origin or to the cache, asking, am I allowed to access this video? And then it waits for an answer to say, yes, you're allowed. It's basically showing your passport. Can I enter this country? And then the border security says yes or no. So that's what a course header does. So if you're not caching it, it needs to go all the way to the origin server to ask for that permission. If you are caching it, it can go to the cache, and it can give you that go from the cache, so that it's closer to the user and it's a faster retrieval of your passport stamp, basically.
Okay.
And then you can go and enter the country, or in this case, watch the video.
Yeah. So Shanook, how does it affect the performance and the cost?
So if you can imagine that when you do not cache the course header, and every pre-approval to ask, let's say 1 million users want to watch your video, and this 1 million users want to ask for approval if they can watch the video.
Yeah.
That 1 million users need to ask approval to your origin server if you do not cache the course header. So all these pre-requests, they go to your origin server before the actual request can happen. The actual request can happen if you put your caching settings right to the caching. But if you also cache the course headers, then the pre-approval goes to the caching closer to the user, which means that you also have to travel less distance, which will also is cheaper, cost effective for your business. It impacts the performance dramatically, because if I have to wait for this pre-approval first before I can watch that video, it takes seconds, and customers don't want to wait seconds before the video is loaded. So it needs to be cached so it can be fed to you or distributed to you closest to your location where you want to stream your video.
Okay, that's an interesting fact, actually.
Yeah, because in this way, the approval goes from the cache close to you, and the content delivery goes from the cache as well close to you. That optimizes your performance and costs.
Exactly. So, Shanook, how can the customer properly cache the course header?
So they can do that in 2 ways. They can do it on the web browser individually, but you can imagine if you have millions of users that want to access your video, that's a lot of effort and a lot of work, manual work. So you better do that at the CDN layer. So if customers don't use the CDN, they have to do that individually on the web browser. But if you do that on the CDN layer, it will be automatically cached for all the pre-requests that is coming to you. So you just need to set it up once, which also saves you a lot of effort and manual work.
Exactly. So Shanook, what are the key settings that the customer need to make sure is configured?
So if you want to do course header caching, you need to make sure that the vary header is also well configured. So if you don't set up a vary header, the course header cannot match the pre-request from the original request. Okay. So basically what happens is first the pre-request comes in to ask, can I access this video? And then the real request comes in to access the video, which you granted, yes, you can access the video, like response to. So in order to match those requests coming from the same origin, it needs to have also set up a vary header so that they can match the pre-request with the real request. Otherwise, the course header doesn't know how to match the pre-request with the real request. So that's what you also need to set up as well.
So Shanook, it would be great if you can share some real-life customer story with our listeners.
Yeah, so we had a customer that did not set up the course header caching. And they were streaming a live event. So what happened was millions of users were watching that event. And in order to connect to that event, every time a user wants to connect, it needs to send a pre-request to the origin. So it creates their overload of the origin by itself by not setting up the caching properly. If they had set up the course header caching properly, the pre-requests could have been approved from the caching, from the POPs. But because that was not done, all the requests came into the origin server and it got overloaded, which meant that millions of users could not access that event, and they experienced an outage because the servers could not handle it. The origin servers couldn't handle it. That again means a lot of damage for your reputation. It means performance problems, obviously, And it means also that customers cannot log into your events.
Yeah.
So you lose revenue. And that's traumatic for your business.
Okay. Thank you, Shanook, for sharing such insights and great information for us. Now we know that how important it is to configure your course header caching. It's significant for the business and also to give a better experience to the customers and better business continuity.
Thank you, Pamily.
And stay tuned for more episodes where we'll bring all the tech information to you. We hope you found this episode insightful. For more content, like, share, and subscribe. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at leaseweb.com/newsletter.